The capabilities approach talks about the opportunity gradient. That's not the boulder. It's the steepness of the hill. You're pushing it up. You're the boulder. Your client is the boulder. Our problem here in mental world is that we're always looking at the boulder and we rarely consider making the hill less steep. The capabilities approach tells us to put the social back in social work. We view a social worker as someone who works with someone else, who provides therapy or linkages, and it's centered on the person. But social work began as a movement for social justice and was meant to address the issues of social injustice that arose with the Industrial Revolution. Remember, I said we mislocate the problem when we make it just about mental illness or just about the individual's inability to excel and achieve. More and more, we're learning through research that asks the right question, how it's not about the individual's deficits due to mental illness, it's about the individual's deficits due to social stratification, accumulative disadvantage, and poverty. In my case, I got arrested by the police 3 times, twice for trespass, once for harassment, always quoting scripture. One time, my mother came for me. She was a nice suburban school teacher. Another time in California, it was my uncle, chief of pulmonary medicine at Cedars-Sinai Hospital. And the third time, it was my cousin, the lawyer. What does that say to you? It said to the police, this guy has nice middle-class people who will take care of him. He's in the right caste. It plays out like this. For years, I felt like the world's biggest failure. The eldest of my generation, I was expected to achieve. I had great grades, top SATs, merit scholar. I was in Mensa. I was expected to attend an Ivy League law school. My father went to Harvard, but I was already cutting class and getting stoned in high school. And after 2.5 years of college, I tuned in, turned on, and dropped out, which was Timothy Leary's advice for how to find the divinity within. I found a ton of divinity. I think that was on all my charts. Is in touch with the divine, medicate heavily. All that great potential came down to cab driving. Within the capabilities framework, cab driving is the vocation for a drug addict. It allows you to earn money for drugs, drive to where the drugs are, buy the drugs, or drive other people to buy their drugs and have them give it to you as a tip, and then use the drugs without ever leaving the vehicle. I finally lost that job and ended up with nothing. I did have housing that did not depend on compliance with treatment. The thing that someone threatened to take away from me was, ironically, treatment. I was coming to therapy high, which makes perfect sense to me. Why wouldn't you toke up before you had to see your therapist? And she said, and this tells you how good she was, because in 14 years, no one had ever said this to me. She said, you go to rehab or we're done. This is person-centered care. This is your choice. You do not have to go to rehab, and I do not have to treat you. So I chose. I went to rehab. I had capabilities. And in the 12-step world, I met others of my kind, others who had achieved what I wanted to achieve, who showed me I could achieve, that I had achieved a lot. The only problem was it was stupid. Here's one of the things I learned in recovery that the research clearly bears out. Surrender is better than resistance. It takes less energy, it's less frustrating, and you're able to deal with things the way they are. In my 12-step program, we call it the first step. We admitted we were powerless over our addiction, that our lives had become unmanageable. You know how many ways that can be said? We're powerless over alcohol, over sexual obsession, over food, over gambling, over mental illness. I will note here that this is not the surrender that was forced upon me on every locked psych unit or in every seclusion room and with every form of restraint known to man. This is the surrender that I made the choice to accept. Recovery is taking the action and giving up the result. Here in mental patient world, all we think about is results. I may lose my benefits. I may get fired. My symptoms may return. I had to be willing to risk all that in order to get from the mess I was then to the mess I am now. Do you even grade in IPRTs, in voc rehab? Is that not person-centered? I dropped out in 1976. I went back to school in 1988. The very first day on the campus of Westchester Community College, I was struck by how similar it was to being at a private suburban psychiatric hospital. A campus is a campus. Only suddenly I had a new identity. I was a student, and for no other reason than here I was with the other students, acting like the other students. I even had a student ID. How simple is that? And speaking of ID, if I ran a voc program or a clubhouse, I'd issue one of these to everyone. It's like a dog tag. It says you belong to someone. You have an identity as one of us, not one of them, whoever them is. At Choice, we learned that in order to be issued picture ID, you need to submit a form of picture ID. Having picture ID lowers the opportunity gradient, making it a little easier to move up. So I'd be on campus, looking a little depressed and scruffy, like a mental patient, but also like a student. And somebody would say hi, and my first instinct would be to answer, hi, my name is Josh, I have bipolar, I'm taking 700 milligrams. And I'd have to stop and say, yo, dude, Josh, poli-sci. I know a woman. I'll call her Mary Bell. I think she still has an active outpatient commitment order hanging over her, and an intensive case manager. We all know what that means. One day I saw her in a suit, and I said in that charmingly condescending way I have, Mary Bell, you clean up nice. And she said in that slow, effectless, over-medicated way that she has, I'm going for an interview. So I asked, Mary Bell, where are you going for an interview? And she says, to law school. And she got accepted.